Hello, welcome back to my writing channel. My name is Josie, and we are still in the midst of reworking an old project I wrote over 5 years ago. It was a murder mystery story, and I've done a bunch of re-outlining, and we have started on the first draft in a long time, but it is draft 6. It's hard for me to know exactly how far I am into the story since I copy pasted old chunks that I wanted to keep of prose into the chapters where I knew they would be. I think I'm probably around 15 to 20,000 words in, but I've reached the point where my main character has made her decision to investigate. So, based on her own motivations, based on her own goals and her own insecurities, she has decided that she is going to figure out how this person died. And so we are kind of launching into now this investigation as she puts together all of these clues. This process has been a lot more convoluted. There's been a lot of missing pieces, more than I thought there would be. There's one more thing, one more relationship, one more dynamic that I really want to nail down and introduce to the reader before I feel confident moving on. And I think it's a pretty easy fix. But for a little bit of context, and some of this might be a repetition if you watched a lot of my videos, but when I wrote this book originally, I was pantsing. I didn't really know what was going on. I was just making it up on the fly. And so it was through the learning process of writing this first thriller, it was my first thriller ever, that I understood what my process was. I understood what I need to outline in order to feel confident in my story structure and the kind of developmental things in the story. And it saved me so much time and frustration in further books that I've written. But something else that I've developed, I think around the third thriller that I wrote, I've written 5 at this point, is I've really enjoyed incorporating flashbacks. So I had flashbacks in the third thriller I wrote and the fifth. I don't think I actually put any in the fourth because I didn't think it needed it. But now that I've had this thought, I'm like, maybe I could go back and put in the fourth because the fourth thriller is also a little bit on the shorter side. Anyways, essentially, my new plan of attack is I think I need to develop a couple flashback moments to breadcrumb in, at least for the first half of the story, to add some extra layers of conflict and understanding about the dynamics that are going on. So without spoiling anything, the context around my story is that we have all these people working at a remote field camp. And so somebody passes away at the end of the summer. So we start the story at the end of the summer. But of course, there's 3.5 months that they were all living together before that. And I think there could be some really interesting ways that I can incorporate those flashbacks as well, because my main character has memory issues. So she has a penchant for drinking, which is not a good combination with her past of concussions. So she has memory blocks. So potentially I could play with as she's remembering things, maybe as she's giving up drinking as much because she's so focused on her investigation and she's trying to better herself. Maybe things could come back. I don't know if that's scientifically accurate, but it might work for the narrative. But there's especially 1 or 2 scenes that I think are really important at the beginning to really understand how she views 2 other characters that she's there with. And now that I'm thinking about it, there may also be another interesting flashback I could utilize to set up a reveal that happens around the midpoint. So I think before I start writing any of these, I'm going to sit down and come up with just a big list of all the potential flashbacks I could want in my story. In total, I came up with 5 different flashbacks that I think that would really help and enhance the story that I already have going on in present time. And 3 of those have very specific scenes in that I want them to encompass, but 2 of them, I know their function. I know what I want to have happen as a plot point, but I have no idea how I want it to go down. So I'll have to do some more brainstorming for those. I've also been struggling recently just finding the motivation to write. So rather than convince myself to pull out my laptop, I decided to try and make things a little bit more fun to try and do this first flashback. So I used this typewriter that my mom got me as a graduation gift recently. I haven't really used very much. So I did it for a couple of paragraphs before I was just getting a little frustrated with how slow it was, because to really get the letters printed, you have to do one finger at a time. But I feel like when I'm in the drafting zone, I need those words down so much faster. And so it's much easier to type out on a computer. There's something I just really love about writing flashbacks. I think it's the vignette aspect of it, of you just have to find this one scene, this one conflict. It just feels so self-contained, and I really enjoy writing them. It makes me wonder if I would enjoy writing short stories, but I just don't have ideas that are good for short stories. And as well, the vignettes or these flashbacks that I write aren't condensed like short stories are. they are part of a larger arc, so there's not as much happening with each sentence. But I did finish today on the computer after I rewrote everything I did on the typewriter. Though I liked using the typewriter first. Like, I feel like it really got me thinking and really helped me set the scene more than if I just gone straight to the laptop. But I've just finished the first flashback and I'm super happy with it. I already know exactly where I want to put it in the story, and I know exactly how it's going to lead into the second flashback. That at this point, I think the flashbacks are going to occur chronologically through the narrative at this point. Like, the first two, I think, will, and I know exactly how I want the second one to affect the present day plot, the reveal that it would give the reader, and like that depth of knowledge that they wouldn't have had previously. But I'm going to take a little bit of a break now because I don't want to burn myself out, especially as I'm like trying to get back into writing after just like not having the motivation to do so. But I have a clear idea and enthusiasm for what I want for the second flashback. I completed the second flashback this morning. It took like 2 writing sessions. So once, I think I wrote it yesterday or the day before, and then today just kind of going back through it and really fleshing it out to make me feel like really good about it. And I really like its positioning in the book, not only from the chapter that comes before it, like I think it leads in really well to like juxtapose some stuff, and then the things that it leaves off on in that flashback really help increase the stakes for the following present chapter. I like didn't do this on purpose. Like, when I was plotting or writing these previous chapters in like present timeline, I did not know that this would fit here. But now that it's there, I'm like, someone must have thought, if not me, the universe made it happen, because it couldn't have been any better even if I was trying and I intentionally was doing this. I'm also really happy with how the flashback turned out. It's its own standalone chapter, and the main character has to deal with some pretty tough emotions. And they're not like big emotions, but they're kind of those like dread, internal embarrassment, shame kind of emotions. And it's so funny because like your job is literally to make these characters suffer. And I've written some pretty troubled characters in very dangerous, life-threatening conditions, but this one has felt kind of the one of the most impactful for me. And it's such a quiet moment. Like, I'm sure if you ever read this book in this section, you'll be like, this was it. But it's almost so quiet and so real. Like, it happens to people on a day-to-day. Like, it's a normal thing to happen to a normal person, that I think it hits harder because it's like something that happens that just really sucks. And now I'm going to jump into writing the third flashback. So this is the third one that I have like a clear idea of what I want. And this one's really interesting because it's one flashback, but I think I'm actually going to split it into 2 and have it in 2 different spots, where the first one really sets something up and misleads the reader a little bit. And then the second half is kind of the reveal that I think will be good leading into the midpoint, or like right around the midpoint. So I'm not going to choose first where I want to put things. I think the plan will just be to write it, maybe figure out where I want that breaking point to be, and have it as 2 separate chunks. And then from there, I'll actually look through my plan for chapters to come and figure out where it fits a little bit better. Because I don't really have a clear vision right now of where it's supposed to be. But I'm going to have to think carefully about how I'm relaying information, because there's a lot of tricky things going on in this flashback. I'm really happy with how the third flashback came out, both the first setup and the reveal in the second part. But it's been a little bit more difficult about figuring out where to place it in the story. I know exactly where I want to put the second half of it, like the reveal at the midpoint. It makes total sense. But I've been playing around a little bit with where to put the first half, because I don't know how far I want to put it into the story, because it has to come before the second part, obviously. But I don't know how early I want to set it up and what makes sense, because I don't want to just like put it in a random spot so it feels very like abrupt when you're going through the book. That I want it to be done earlier so that it feels like more of a reveal when it happens. Like, I don't want to set it up and then just answer it almost like the next chapter, a couple chapters later. So I'm still playing around with some of that. I've actually been going into the book again in the present timeline and kind of moving things around, figuring things out. And then I was going to jump straight into trying to figure out what that fourth and fifth flashback was, because I only had that one line of like, this is the purpose of the scene. And I quickly realized I did not need to write the fourth and fifth flashback, because I had actually already addressed them in those 3 flashbacks without thinking about it, because I hadn't looked at them since I brainstormed them. And so the second flashback took care of one of those, plot progressions, and then this third flashback took care of the second one that I had to figure out. Which means I think those 3 flashbacks have us set for what we need in the story. I mean, there's always the chance that I come up with something else, but I feel like that's all I really needed them for. And they were really helpful even beyond including them as like reveals or more information in the story, because it was just good for myself to write about these characters at the beginning of summer. Because like one of the themes that I really wanted to work on in this draft that I thought about when I first created the story but didn't really do much with was the idea of like changing over time in this secluded environment, and like what does being at this camp, yes, there's a murder mystery at the end, but like what does being at this camp for those 3.5 months do to these people? We're jumping straight into where are they at the end, how are they feeling about each other, how are they feeling about themselves, that I really want to show kind of that lighter version at the start for the book and also for myself, because I think I've now got just a better perspective of where we're starting and where we're ending, because it can be a little bit tricky, right, when you've got these long-standing relationships to really figure out where they started, how they morphed over time, because all relationships are constantly changing. As I was trying to place this last flashback, I actually revisited the query letter, so like basically the pitch of the book that I'd written when I was re-outlining this story to do this draft. And I feel really good about a lot of things that I have included and the way that I've changed it from the last draft to this one. But there is one aspect of the story that I don't think I touched on as much as I should. I mean, it's like a one sentence, maybe half a sentence kind of throwaway line of something that could happen in the story that I haven't really incorporated. And it would also involve having to think about the past and the flashbacks. So I'm still undecided yet whether or not I really want to include that thing. So I've started to do a little bit more brainstorming, not necessarily of me writing flashbacks, but since so much of the story revolves around forgetting the past, remembering things, maybe remembering them wrong, maybe misinformation being spread, that kind of a thing. I feel like there are other things I could include in those 3.5 months that I'm currently not thinking about that could help, but I don't want to just like shoehorn things in and mess with character motivations and like muddy the waters a little bit. So I don't know that I'll be making that change specifically, and I know this is really vague, but that change specifically from the query letter that I haven't addressed in this draft. But I am going to start thinking about what those could be, especially now that I've started to plot out a little bit of like what exactly happened in those 3.5 months. What did it actually look like? I don't know if I'm ever going to write the flashbacks for those other things, but at least just like this has opened my mind to really trying to nail down exactly like the progression of events, rather than just saying in the past this happened, in the past that happened, but like for really how all these relationships got so entangled and intertwined and how these relationships evolved with different things that people did. But now it's time to get back to the main present storyline to keep writing. So that is going to be the conclusion of this video. Those flashbacks were really helpful. I'm really happy I did them. I think they add a ton to the plot, and I will see you in the next writing video.